So as I was stood here the other day, looking after my little plant babies, listening to the birds and watching the butterflies, I suddenly realised we haven't talked about rewilding here at Brimwood Farm for a while. So in today's video, we're going to talk about our rewilding ethos, our hopes and dreams for the future, ways that we're going to make money out of it, and basically the grand plan. Rewilding has become a bit of a polarising word, and there's many people deploring the idea of just allowing the wilderness to come back into the land. But I believe that you can farm and rewild at the same time, and that's what we're trying to do here. And you only have to look at the very famous NEP rewilding project to see that actually what used to be a dairy farm and made no money now not only taps into ecotourism but also still farms. They still farm livestock very productively. And if you haven't heard of NEP or you don't know about it, then I look it up. I will put a link in the description. Go and read. It's a fantastic project in the south of England. Now the fantastic thing about rewilding basically is it's easy, because you basically step back and do nothing. Well, it's not quite that easy. You do have to do a little bit of management, and certainly here where we've got 37 acres, we couldn't just allow the animals to completely free roam without some management, because it's not enough acreage to sustain the amount of livestock we'd want to keep. But certainly the grand plan here is to ring fence the entire property, and that is just to put boundary fencing along the entire property, which is super expensive, why we haven't done it yet, and let our animals out and let them do their own thing, obviously under some animal husbandry and some management, but allow the cattle and the sheep to graze as they would in the wild, thereby kind of creating a more naturalistic landscape. Now, most of you that watch the channel already know that our ethos here is not to kill anything, and I suspect there are quite a few people, maybe some of you watching, and also our neighbours, who get very frustrated with that, because they just see a weedy field spreading possible weeds and flowers onto their manicured pasture. We don't kill rooks, we don't kill foxes, things that can be considered a pest to farmers, we leave, because I believe that nature finds an equilibrium. The one thing we do kill are rats, and I feel that that's okay, because actually the population of rats has exploded only because we are on site. We have brought in feed for them, we've brought in animal feed that they then eat on. But again, we've brought in some feral cats. They are going to start managing that population. So hopefully even that will become sort of an equilibrium. And I'm happy with a few country rats living around. I just don't want millions of them. And before you say it, I know bringing cats onto a rewilding site is fairly sacrilegious. But we had to find a way of naturally dealing with these rats that were just getting everywhere and causing quite a lot of destruction. I know how much damage cats can do to wildlife populations, but I hope that because we're doing so much rewilding here and we have so much wildlife, that again there will kind of be that sort of equalisation of wildlife versus cat. The cats also came from a charity. They've all been spayed and neutered, and if it does become a problem, we will take them away. And so despite not actually filming rewilding stuff for a while, our farm is very equally split into three. The market garden, which as you know is no chemical, no till, as organic as we can make it. Rare breeds, which you've seen with our Norfolk horns, our Norfolk black turkeys, our large black pigs, etc. And then third, as equal as anything else, is the rewilding project. One of my favourite spots on the farm is the pit. And the pit's an old chalk pit, but it's probably been left to be wild for the longest out of any of the farmland. There's a rookery up here. We planted a bluebell wood, so we've just begun to plant bluebells about 4 or 5 years ago. So we haven't got a huge showing yet, but they are coming through. And if I scan back, all of these tufts are bluebells. So I'm hoping that one day this will be completely covered in English bluebells. This section is largely sycamore trees, and they do drop a lot of seedlings, and actually, as you can see down here, the floor is littered, but most of them don't make it because of the canopy stops the light. I never planted bluebells out this far, so you can see even here, look, they're spreading, which is fabulous. And also another thing, at this time of year you get the absolutely luminous green fronds of bracken starting to appear. In a couple of weeks this will just be a swathe of waist height or taller bracken, which is fantastic for animals because they get to move through it undercover. So it basically gives them a slightly hidden corridor. Now our camping goats that live in the caravan are up there, and then if we come around this way, again, look at all of this. There's lords and ladies, there's nettles, there's all this dry broken bracken from last year, which again is fantastic for creatures to live underneath. There's a scrape here, there's another scrape here, that's probably rabbits. I love these old trees. I think they are fabulous, quite the statement. And then again you come over the top here, and all through there is more scrub and nettle and bramble. And down here there is a den or a set, and indeed we do have badgers, as you know, and we do have foxes. And as I said earlier, we don't kill anything. They are here to be part of the ecosystem. And badgers, although they can do a lot of damage, British badgers, 80% of their diet is worms, which is incredible if you think about how many worms must that take to make a badger feel full. 80% of their diet. And actually a lot of fox diets are also insects. I've just noticed over here, often when I come down here I notice more things. But firstly, there's a little trail through here, so a creature uses this as a little walkway, but also there is a crabapple here. So a fantastic source of food. You can see all the blooms there. I'm not going to wade through here because I don't want to disturb the wildlife. So we're going to try and pick our way in our badly prepared shoes to walk through these stingers, but we're going to try and follow this little path that somebody has already made for us, and we will clamber up the wall. Here's this beautiful crabapple, and also look at these oaks, look at these fabulous, fantastic trees that are perched here on the edge of this pit. It's just an astonishing array of foliage, and look, there's another one there perched. I get quite excited. I'm probably quite nerdy. Also, this one I love. Again, another beautiful oak, not perched, but look at how moss has colonised the back edge of this tree. Not so much the front, but the back edge, where it's obviously stays moisture and more humid throughout the year, so that moss is able to thrive. There's a little hazel tree here that's obviously been coppiced at some point, but now just left. And then if we can climb over this bank without me getting really stung, let's just use this oak as a bit of a brace, thank you. And then we're back to our big wild meadow. If you want to see more rewilding content on the channel like this, please let me know in the comments, and you know, mention things that you'd be interested in seeing, because I know the channel is largely based on the market garden and the animals, but as I say, rewilding is a third of our project. So if you want to see more, let me know. This is our Wildflower Meadow and woodland area. Now, we don't own this wood, but as again many of you will know, we have started to plant trees in a third of this field at that bottom edge, and we hope we can then extend that woodland into our property over time, and just create another environment. But the top 2/3 of this field is the Wildflower Meadow, and you can see there's a lot of scrub and grass around the outside, and also the fact that it gets really wet in the winter because there's clay. See, we've got these reeds, but it is a fabulous field. At the moment we're early in the year, and so we're about to have an explosion of pink, as this here is ragged robin, and that is going to burst into beautiful pink flowers. And I love this field because it's quite a spectacle of nature's changing seasons, because it starts off pink as all of the fantastic ragged robin bursts into flower. It then moves at the end of May to white as the oxeye daisies come out, and then later on the season it becomes this blazing yellow because we've got lady's bedstraw that comes out in here. So it kind of, as the seasons go, it changes colour, which is quite spectacular. Already we're getting lots of self-sown in here, so there were never cowslips in here before, but now, as you can see, they are starting to appear. The other thing though that is appearing is grass. Lots and lots of grass. So probably for the first time this year, in late summer, I will bring the sheep in here to do some conservation grazing, to graze this grass down, because otherwise the grass will completely overcome all of the wildflowers. The other thing that I'm going to start doing and investing in is bringing in some golden rattle. Now, golden rattle actually parasitizes grass, so it grows on grass roots and kills it. So if you've got a lot of grass coming into your wildflower patch, get some golden rattle, and that will help deal with the problem. If you've got a large area, get the sheep into, but do it after the plants have had a chance to seed themselves. While we're here is a good opportunity to talk about hedgerows, but I've also just discovered down here a little egg. Now this looks like it could be a pheasant egg that's hatched out, but I'm not very up to date on my eggs, but it's kind of a similar colour to our Reeves pheasant eggs, so there might have been a clutch of pheasants. There certainly are pheasants and red-legged partridges, both of which of course are introduced and not native. But let's talk about fabulous hedgerows. Now, one of the things I am hugely grateful to my grandfather for was that at a time when everybody was grubbing out their hedgerows to make big fields that they could more easily access with modern day, as it was back in the 50s, etc., tractors and machinery, he had the forethought to leave them all in. So we have some spectacular hedges, really wide, really big, mature trees inside, and great ditches. Now personally, I believe that hedges are one of the most important modern day aspects of countryside, because even on a huge farm that has stripped away stuff and is growing monoculture, as long as they've got a big hedge along their edge, that is a corridor for wildlife. So with our hedgerows, you can see they've grown up high and out, and the centre is really empty, which you might think is a bad thing, but actually that in itself, not only for drainage, but it creates a corridor. That empty centre allows larger mammals, foxes, deer, badgers, in the past wild boar, to navigate across the wilderness. You've got all of these fabulous trees, like look at that blackthorn there, that's going to make me lots of lovely sloes later in the year, but also the rose with the rose hips, the haw, which is going to burst into flower and provide pollination, nectar for the pollinators, and then later all those haws. And then you've got the big mature trees which offer nesting places. In this one particular, we've got an owl nest box, but also amongst all that cracked wood and on the foliage, caterpillars, woodpeckers, things like that. And then as equally as important as the hedge is the next door scrub, because this is where your little nesting birds are going to be. So the hedgerow has opened out, so they're not going to be safe in there nesting, because bigger predators, corvids, will come and steal the chicks. More kind of ground nesting birds and smaller birds like whitethroats, dunnocks, things like that, are going to use all of this scrub to build their nests, where they're a lot more protected. And then actually when the babies fledge as well, they can pop straight down onto the ground before they're able to fly and hide away. So that combination of these really good hedgerows and this scrub means that you've got multiple ecosystems, multiple habitat for birds and other animals to breed and live and be safe. And I guess on a smaller plot than Nep, again, where they could just allow hundreds of acres to turn into scrub, here we have to manage it a little bit, because otherwise our entire 37 acres would become scrubland, which is fantastic for the animals that need scrub, but not fantastic for the animals that don't want scrub. So we do have to manage it a little bit. So I like the big ballsy hedgerows, I like the scrub along the edges, but I do try and keep the fields clear of that scrub. And actually, once we do ring fence the property and we've managed to get the animals to free range, a lot of this, where you can see where the brambles started to come out, will be grazed by cattle and by the goats, and they will nibble it back and keep it under check and create this sort of more modern actually, the opposite, this more historical natural landscape. Now I know I've geeked on for rather a long time about this, but really this rewilding is the reason we're here. It's the reason that we're doing, we came and we got the rare breeds and we got the market garden, so that we could basically salvage this little plot and keep it as it is, and not allow it to be bought by somebody else and turned into a big monoculture, and hopefully create a sense of change as well, maybe in the local area, and get other people to do the same. So I know I've been banging on about it, but it really is a huge passion of mine that I don't always sort of talk about. When it comes to making money on our rewilded farm, it's not just the end goal of a ring fence property and the rare breed animals making the money, but it's also tapping in to the eco-tourism market, which is a huge thing for lots of people, whether they live in the countryside or whether they're more in cities and don't get to get out. The other day I mowed this strip down beside the market garden because we're going to be putting in a bird hide in the Wildflower Meadow. That meadow is absolutely rammed with deer, yellow hammerbirds, hare, all sorts of animals that people can come along, rent the hide and take pictures. We also, this is a big, huge dream. Again, once ring fenced, I would love to build some Airbnb / guest house tree houses that you can come out and you can sit on your balcony in the morning with your cup of coffee and you can look out across a British safari. So you would see our farm animals rewilded, doing their thing, going about as naturally as possible. So there are opportunities to make money from ecotourism as well on a rewilded farm. Now, one thing we don't have on this farm, I don't want to be greedy, but we don't have a river or a stream. But what we do have are two natural ponds. This is our second pond, and this is the pond that we've most recently been working on in terms of clearing it. It was once completely surrounded with scrub like that, which on one hand is great for the pond, but it blocks light, and it also means that all of these deciduous leaves fall in and sour the water. But it also means that all of these deciduous leaves fall in and sour the water. So what we've been working on this year, or over this past winter, was opening up this pond. So opening up this entire bank along here to allow more light to get in, so that you've got shady areas of the pond and light areas of the pond. Now, one downside of that is, as the pond sort of changes and evolves until it reaches its equilibrium, we are going to end up getting some of this algae bloom. But again, that shouldn't stay for that long. That should probably just work its way through, and it's not been as bad as I would have thought. And that's just because more light's getting through to this pond. One thing we have very specifically done with this pond, though, is not cut all of it, because we have a fantastic hedge here that runs almost through the entire property. It's really, really old, it's lovely, and it's got a vast, diverse array of plants and wildlife. So it was really important for me to keep the pond, which is here, attached to the hedge. So at the back of the hedge, at the back of the pond, the hedge is effectively attached to the hedge, and it means that any wildlife moving up and down this corridor can still remain in camouflage and not have to trek across a field to get to water. And then we often find little muntjac deer that are quite small and don't necessarily want to walk across, a field. And we often find that they are drinking down at that water's edge and then just can scurry back into this hedge and go wherever they need to go. You may have seen my video the other day where I talked about losing one of our goats to listeriosis, which is found in the soil and often brought to the surface by moles. However, again, we don't kill the moles here because we're not cutting this for hay. If we were cutting it for hay, there may be a problem bringing that dust and that soil that might be infected with listeriosis into the feed, but we don't. So I am more than happy for the moles, and he's obviously made a tunnel, or she has made a tunnel along here. Oh, and it goes over there as well. I'm more than happy for them to live out their days here. If you're interested in our rewilding here at Brimwood Farm, please let me know in the comments, and take a look at this playlist where we started to do our pond restoration projects.